Please enjoy Elizabeth Knox's acceptance speech for the Michael L. Printz 2008 Honor Book designation for her novel Dreamquake, Book 2 of the Dream Hunter Duet, recorded live on June 30, 2008, at the Michael L. Printz Award Program held during the American Library Association's annual conference in Anaheim, California.
I've written a speech, and because it's a sort of speech that has to end where it ends, I think I better preface it with my thanks. And if these sound very reserved, it's because I'm a New Zealander and we're like that. I would like to first start by thanking my husband, who's told me not to. My husband is a publisher and an editor. He is my publisher, and because he is the man in the house who is literate, he is also my editor. I follow him around with things saying, have I got that right? And this was forcibly impressed on me this morning when I began practicing my speech and realised that he hadn't proofed it, so it still has my peculiar spelling. So thank you, Fergus, but this one got by you. I am absolutely delighted to be here because I have never met Francis, in face-to-face Francis Foster, my publisher at Forrest Strauss and Giroux, and Jeannie and the rest of the team, because I live so far away, so we communicate by email and the occasional phone call. So yes, it's true, they're real after all. There they are. They're corporeal. Yeah, cool. So thank you very much. They've been great publishers, and they've published 2 of my adult books and then these 2. So yay, FSG, they're where I belong. And I would like to thank the Printz Committee. I was astonished and delighted to get the phone call from them when I had been prepared for, in a state of terrible dread, because when your phone rings at 3 in the morning and you're half asleep, the first thing that happens when you hear an American accent is realise that one of your beloved relatives actually isn't in trouble because you don't know anyone in America. And so it has to be good news or a wrong number. So thank you. You made my day, and it's been going on since then. I've been feeling just warm, apart from the fact I'm in Anaheim and it's warm, since then. And Yolza, you guys are great. You're fantastic. And this speech is really about librarians and dedicated librarians, so I won't say anything more about that. I'll read. Oh, I'll put on my glasses. These are new. Being honoured by librarians means a lot to me. Let me explain why. I got my first library card when I was 8, when we moved from a state house in the Hutt Valley, a post-war government housing development, to an architect-designed house on a west-facing hill of a new subdivision in the capital. My parents were determined savers, and all my life there'd been the section and house to pay off, so there hadn't been money to spare for books. There were books in the house though, and when I first learned to read, I played a kind of game with my new trick by dipping into any attractive books I found, like Paradise Lost or Don Quixote with the Gustave Doré engravings. I wasn't reading, I only scanned sentences. My sisters and I had a few picture books, mostly acquired through one of Dad's socialist friends. Books with grim stories about the perils of being uncooperative, like Pussies Mustn't Fight, a book which ends with 2 kittens having torn themselves into 3-colour shreds and gobbets. We had the Soviet books and my mother's Swiss Family Robinson and Heidi and Tales of the Knights of the Round Table, all of which my older sister read to me. So, I'd been promised a library card, but that promise wasn't any more significant to me than that of a new school and a room I only had to share with one sister. But Dad was very big on the library card. What I didn't know then was that he had, in effect, been saved by a librarian. When my father was 13, he got in trouble with the law, and his mother, whose husband had never recovered from the First World War and had abandoned his family, decided she couldn't cope with him. He became a welfare boy, which in wartime and under the Manpower Act meant being sent to work somewhere as a low-paid labourer. He was put into the care of a dairy farmer, an alcohol-abusing skinflint, a taciturn Kiwi version of some Dickensian villain. Dad slept behind the farmhouse in a forry, a tiny dirt-floored shelter without electricity. At the dinner table, the farmer and his wife watched every bite that went into his mouth, and the only free time he had was the hours on Sundays between milking. On that farm, my father learned to ride, the farmer riding beside him and striking the small of his back with a stick so he'd sit up straight. He learned how to strip a cow for the last drops of rich milk, how to kill and dress a sheep, how to strain a fence and use a stumping jack, how to pack the hoof of a lame horse, how to drive a spring cart or a tedder, how to drive a 2-horse team to pull a plough or disc or harrow or sweep, or a team of 6 in block and chains hauling a swamp plough. He learned skills scarcely anyone has now, but no one talked to him. And then one day he discovered the library in Greytown, a public library stocking a wider range of books than his school, and certainly more than the lending bookshop he was going to for his westerns and detective stories. He was enraptured. He discovered again the books that had been read aloud to him when he was younger. He read books by George Eliot and Charles Dickens, the ones he knew already, and then all their other books. And the librarian, the only other person he saw there most evenings, introduced him to other novelists and travel books, philosophy, science, religion and poetry. The librarian was delighted to have not only a customer but an enthusiast. She would question him about the books he'd been reading and very tactfully made him realise that the world was far more complex than he had so far thought. She gave him a dictionary, and lying in the foray each night reading by candlelight, looking up words he didn't understand, my father slowly began to change into the man I knew, the journalist, the editor, the man who could represent a library card to his 8-year-old daughter as something even better than tickets to a circus. When he did tell me about his time as a welfare boy, Dad would refer to that woman, the Greytown librarian, as a true friend through whom he found a whole new freedom. So, my family moved house, I got my library card, and on my first visit to the Wadestown Library I took out what I think of as my first book, the first I chose for myself. It was Roger Lancelin Green's Perseus the Gorgon Slayer. I had decoded passages of Don Quixote and had been read Heidi, but this was my first book. I have no memory of anything external to my experience of reading Green's Perseus. There was only the story in which I was absorbed, reading, that magical, solitary, intimate activity. So perhaps I should have become a librarian rather than a writer. And sometimes I feel that, although I have managed to become a writer, my true aim is somehow to become a book. And I think that there is something in that odd and impossible aim that led me to write a book for young adults. Because I was already an established writer for adults, I have had to answer questions about why I suddenly decided to write for a different audience. Putting aside the fact that I never did feel that I was writing for a different audience and that whoever reads my books, that's my audience, I'll try to tell you why I'm so glad I made the attempt. And to do so, I'll have to tell you another story. A couple of months ago, I was on a plane from Nice to Frankfurt, and because we'd booked late, I wasn't sitting next to my husband. I found myself in conversation with Wolfgang, whose family business was to manufacture bandages and splints and medical corsets in Stuttgart. We'd been asking each other questions about what we did for a living, and one question he asked me was what most influenced my writing. Sometimes we say what's true when it least matters. Wolfgang wasn't my public. He wasn't someone to whom it was in my best interest to represent myself well. And more importantly, he wasn't a New Zealander. He asked his question and I hesitated. I didn't want to embark on my usual explanation of my childhood imaginary games to someone whose English might have been excellent but who lacked the whole reserve of the colloquial. I hesitated, and the other thing finally made itself felt, the other thing that was true. And what I said was this: I think that being a mother has been very influential. I know it isn't universally true that being a parent changes people for the better, but for enough of us, when we become a parent, we turn into a kind of custodian of our culture, of civil kindness, of all the good of the world that requires attentive maintenance. Any parent who takes parenting seriously wants to pass on a world in good order or to fix things if they need fixing. This is a very ordinary truth, but it's a big one. So, being a parent has made me engage with the world as if thinking deeply and having the facts and keeping the story straight and rich wasn't just my project, but a common project. I wanted to get things right not for my own satisfaction, but so as not to let everyone else down. So that's what I more or less said to Wolfgang, bandage manufacturer from Stuttgart, and why I'm telling you this is that it has a bearing on why I decided to write for young adults. Yes, I'm a reader of young adult fiction. And yes, I had always wanted to write one myself. But in the end, what made me write the kind of young adult book I wrote was my altered understanding of myself as inheritor and benefactor. I talked to my son and remembered being talked to, being taught, being gifted experience. Young adults are sometimes unwilling ears. They can feel put upon. They can also feel dispossessed or like renouncing what they stand to inherit. And I guess I wanted to talk to that too, to be serious, to try to say, yes, you are here and there will be things you can do, things that are yours to do, even things you alone can do. And of course, I kind of hope that my having done that is my version of giving a dictionary to the lonely welfare boy. Thank you.
This recording is brought to you by Brilliance Audio and the Young Adult Library Services Association, a division of the American Library Association. To listen to all of the 2008 Printz Award speeches, please visit YALSA's website, www.ala.org/YAL